So my current spinning project here on my Ashford Kiwi wheel is from a bat of frost yarn fiber that I carded together in a color gradient. In my birthday video, I went ahead and split that bat in half in order to manipulate it so that I could spin a 2-ply yarn that would follow that color gradient. And I've spun up the first half of that bat here. You can see on the bobbin, although the purple and blues are they're buried underneath the rest of the fiber, but you can see the green, yellow, orange, and pink procession. And the way that I tore that bat into strips for the first half of this spin resulted in very little actual blending in between colors. Instead, I got sort of a distinctly yellow, a distinctly green, a distinctly orange, distinct sections of colors on the first half of this fiber. And I was getting ready to spin the second half of the bat yesterday and had the thought that for the second ply in this yarn, it might be more interesting if I used my hand cards to really blend out that gradient so that one single had sort of distinct color blocks and it was plied together with a very smooth gradient, and that might give me a very interesting overall yarn. Of course, will all be dependent on how equal I got the 50-50 split on that bat. So as with everything in my yarn lab, this is an experiment. I thought it might be interesting to share with you, and it has also been a very long time since I've used my hand cards on my channel. There are some earlier videos where I've shown similar techniques to this, but I mean, that's like circa 2015. The quality's crap. So I thought I would share today with you how I use my hand cards to blend colors for spinning this gradient. Here is my gradient so far. I've started with pink. The way I've been doing this so far is pink, pink plus a tiny bit of orange, sort of equal parts pink and orange, orange plus a tiny bit of pink, just orange, orange with some yellow, equal parts, yellow with just a tiny bit of orange, basically all yellow. So up next will be yellow plus a little bit of green. First off, I will say these are Shacked Spindle Company hand cards. I've had these since 2014, 2015-ish. They are a great, I think at the time they were priced in a way that was accessible to me as a graduate student then, and I have had them for years. I haven't done anything in particular to promote the upkeep, if you will, of these cards, and they're still in great shape and they still work spectacularly. You can see that these are the same, with the fundamental difference that the carding cloth is not attached at this end on this guy, and the carding cloth is attached all the way around, so sealed down at the base on this one. That is because you want to always use one carder as the loading carder and the other carder as the accepting carder. So with the carding cloth stapled down on this one, this is my loading carder. The loose end, this is my accepting carder. It's because I'm going to be pulling the fiber this way, so we want the top of the carding cloth here anchored in place. I have already spun up half of my gradient from pink through to yellow. My last piece, like I said, was basically all yellow, so this next section is going to be mostly yellow plus a little bit of green. If you were being particularly fussy about doing this, you could go so far as to weigh the fiber that you're loading on so that you have, an exact, say, 75-25 split, an exact 50-50 split, an exact, 25-75 split. But I would caution you against that for two reasons. One, a little bit of a darker value color will sort of, destroy a lighter value color quickly. Think if you're mixing paint. If you have white paint, one drop of black in that white paint is going to shift the white quite a bit. Whereas one drop of white in the black paint is only going to shift it visually a tiny bit. So you can go by a weighed out, 25% yellow into 75% green, but we're optically blending here, and you may not want to stick to such a rigid system because you might need to eyeball things a little bit as you're going along, if that makes sense. Or maybe I'm just explaining away my laziness and not wanting to weigh anything. Editing Sarah here. I know I said I had 2 reasons not to do a pre-weighed out, predetermined blend. Don't know what my second one might have been. I think that just flew out of my mouth in the moment. My point is, if the goal of what you're doing is to test how fiber blending would work if you pre-weighed and did exact, an exact 100%, 80, 20, 60, 40, etc. If you wanted to do an exact by weight blend, go for it. If you are looking to get a perfectly smooth gradient, don't hold yourself rigidly to those measurements, because some deeper value colors might shift your gradient faster than sort of lighter value colors. That example of 1 drop of black into a can of white paint will quickly shift that paint to gray, whereas 1 drop of white into a can of dark paint probably going to go unnoticed. So if you're looking for a perfectly smooth color gradient, be a little bit more adapting on the fly to get the smooth blend that you're looking for. Point is, up next in my gradient is yellow plus a little bit of green. So I'm going to hold my loading card in my left hand, and I'm going to lash on some of my yellow fiber. Now, when you're loading to blend, the more blending you do with your loading, the less you'll have to do with the cards. So I've put a thin layer of yellow here. I'm going to take my green fiber and put in a little bit of green, right? And then I'm going to put some more yellow on. And remember, I'm looking for at least twice as much yellow to green right now. And because this came from a bat where things were already blended, there is some orange hanging out from before. I'm going to mix that in as well. It's part of the overall yarn color story. So some green. Should also say that this fiber, like I said, came from a spectacularly well-dyed and curated set from Frost Yarns. If you haven't checked out Nicole, she's linked below. Absolutely do so. This fiber is made up of wool, I believe some cotton maybe, or bamboo. I think it's wool, bamboo, and like a synthetic, I always forget what the right term would be. It's not a stellina, an angelina, one of those synthetic shiny fibers without being actual sparkle. So a little bit of green, that's probably enough green, and more yellow here. When you're using cards, some people will teach that you should really only put, if this is the width of your card, you shouldn't fill it right to the edges. You should just be working in the middle. You should never overload your cards. I am notoriously the opposite of that. And I think I want to get to the finished project faster. So I tend to overload my cards so that I have to do less work. It doesn't probably produce the neatest outcome, but everyone's gonna have their own preference. So I've loaded about that much fiber onto here. I'm going to take my collecting carder, my loading carder, grabbing carder in my right hand, and I'm going to start walking my fiber from one onto the other. And you can see that I'm starting basically not even on the cards. So these guys are curved, which really facilitates that walking motion. And you never want to be sort of gnashing the teeth into each other. You want to just grab and walk, grab and walk, grab and walk. And everything has transferred on to my collecting second right-handed card. Now I'm going to flip this one up, and I'm going to transfer it back from this hand to this hand with a little bit of a magic trick. So I've got this guy upright, I've got back to front, and I'm just going to scoop it off. I'll demo that again. I'm going to walk my fiber, and now you can see is when the blending really starts to happen. Walk all of my fiber onto my other card. And sometimes you might need to sort of fold the edges in if you overload your cards like me. I've got it transferred. Flip this one upright, and you're going sort of, you know, you're hitting at a 90-degree angle and you're transferring it on. So it is a come in like this and scrape up and over, and it will all transfer back onto the original card. And I will do this with my next bit of fiber from a different camera angle so that you can see this as much as you need to. So I'm just gonna neaten my edges up a little bit. And I'll transfer one more time. As far as I'm concerned, that's blended enough for what I'm going for. The more times you transfer, the more things are gonna blend together. But 3 will be plenty for me. So like, see how I've got this tail sticking out here? I can just sort of use it to reload that onto this one. Does that make sense? If things start to get messy, you can really play with the angle of your cards. See, I reloaded back onto here so I can grab it into the middle. And it's like a little bit of a rocking, flicking motion that'll really give you the most transfer. Now, put this one down. You can pull your fiber off your cards in a couple different ways. If you wanted, you could roll it from the top. I don't know how well the camera is going to show that. If you wanted, you could roll it from the top into a roll leg. What I'm doing is I'm just going to grab my fiber from the top here and pull it off. And then since I spun my first half of this yarn in a generally worsted kind of fashion, one day I'm going to do a proper video for me about worsted and woolen and how we think too hard about it. But if I see my fiber here, you can see that generally things are going kind of parallel in this direction. So if I roll it up this way, still generally my fibers are going in this direction, and I'm going to spin it in this direction. All right, so is this a worsted or a woolen prep? It's somewhere on the spectrum in between, and generally my fiber is parallel going in this direction. See? Let's load up the next color in my gradient. We're going to use closer to an even blend of yellow and green this time. So load some yellow on. Load some green on. And like I said, the more that you blend things as you load, the less passing back and forth you'll have to do. Some yellow and some green. So just by holding together, you can see this is definitely going to be a step more green than this one was. And transfer, flip, switch, back down, walk the fiber across, flip, back down. Now, see, I've got a little chunk of yellow here. It is totally okay to do things like this when you're blending, to break up that yellow chunk to get a more evenly mix in your final product, right? Like, never hold yourself so rigid to this is exactly how you need to do it. If you see that it's not looking the way you want, stop, use your hands, manipulate the fiber. These are a tool and they do a great job, but your hands are also, you know, probably your most important tool in fiber prep. So always, you know, take whatever step you need to get the product that you want. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this off. And I'm rolling it up. I don't know if there's like an official name for this. I think when I took spinning classes like a long time ago, there was like something about a cigar maybe, like you were rolling tobacco into a little cigar. But anyways, I'm rolling them to have generally parallel, you know, orientation of the fiber is going to be in the same direction that I'm going to spin this yarn. So I will change my camera angle for the next one, try and find something that gives you another view of how I load and transfer fiber with my hand cards. All right, here's another camera angle. So now I'm going green. This is going to be more green, like maybe 70% green, 30% yellow, maybe even less than that. But loading on green fiber. Remember to think about it in terms of using the loading to start that blending process. Some more green. And like I said, I like to overload my cards. I've actually been exercising this as restraint for me in the amount of fiber that I've been putting on. But you know, you just got to get a feel by repetition for how much is too much or too little for your preferred working. Yeah, that's good enough. And now we are going to walk the fiber over to the second card. Everything is here, and again, flip this one up right now, come in, you know, here's that angle, here's that motion that transfers all the fiber over. And this fiber is just sort of loosely associated with this card at first, but as you start to walk it, you know, it'll sit more where it should. And like I said, sometimes you might to clean your edges up with that sort of a motion. That's fine. The other thing is that sometimes I might look over here and say, geez, I could use a little bit more yellow on this side. And I've got a big pocket of yellow here. So it is totally okay to grab it like that, right? Don't feel constrained to it has to be the same motion all the time. The biggest thing that you just don't want to do is really push those teeth into each other. Everything is switched. Up, 90 degrees, transfer. Last pass. See, I'm just gonna, got this big chunk of yellow here that I want to spread out, so I'm gonna just throw it back onto this one. And there you go. Going to pull off my fiber like so and roll it up. One step more green than the last one. Full disclosure, I should have put more yellow in my just yellow one. I'm not going to include this in blending. When I spin it, I will scooch this into my fiber when I'm in my sort of solid yellow era, if you will. So for my last one, I'm just going to use a tiny bit of yellow to mostly green. And again, loading my fiber on. And I mean, there's still a tiny bit of yellow in this green fiber too. And spread that yellow out across the card. Some more green. And walk, 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 flip, transfer, walk, walk, walk. transfer. If you are finding that the fiber is staying in this card and not transferring over, it's a real flicking motion at the end that is going to pull it out and lift it up onto the other card. Like, see how there's that real flick? And that is what I find really will clean the most fiber out of this card. Pull it off. And I am rolling them up this way. There we go. All right, so I could just throw green by itself into my lineup, but I will card this, pass it back and forth a couple of times in order to have the fiber be exactly in the same prep. But I mean, this is how I spun the last fiber. This is how it's coming off of my hand cards, and you can see that they are not too dissimilar despite this having the extra step of processing. So that's a demonstration with my hand cards from 2 different angles. I'm going to continue my gradient, you know, blending the green. The green and the blue are actually fairly similar. The green into the blue, which is going to be, you know, probably just in like one transition. And then the blue to this purple is a pretty big jump, so I'll want to take my time and really go like 90-10 and then, you know, 75-25, you know, kind of slowly progress that gradient. And I will show you the final full gradient once I'm done with it. The last thing I did want to just mention is try not to overwork your fiber. So you can pass your fiber back and forth as many times as you want to get that blend to be spot on, but every time you pass back and forth between cards, you do sort of damage and irritate your fiber a little bit more. You increase the likelihood that you're going to get broken fibers in there, that you're going to get little tangled bits, little nips and noils. So really keep in mind the first and biggest step in the blending process happens in loading the fiber on. So for instance, if you load on all the blue on this side and all the purple, you know, if you were to load on blue here and purple here, it's going to take a lot of passes to blend that. If you layer just blue and just purple on top, it's going to take a lot of passes to blend that. So the first, foremost, most important step in blending your fiber with hand cards is to blend it as much as you care to and can in the loading process. Load a little bit of blue across the course of the card, a little bit of purple across the course of the card, a little bit of blue across the course of the card, a little bit of purple. This is going to minimize the number of passes and the amount of manipulation that you need with your fiber so that you can have light, lovely, undamaged fiber in your final gradient. That'll make you so much happier when you're spinning. So here's my final gradient from pink through to orange, through to yellow. The green and blue were very similar, so the gradient is a bit long here, if you will, but through to a blue, and sorry, the colors on the camera are coming in and out here, but through to the blue and through into my purple at the end. There, it switched to a more true purple, so there's my full gradient. Try and have it stay focused. The other thing that I recommend that you do when you're producing a gradient spin like this, gradient blend like this, is have your gradient lined out, and as you produce each little section of fiber, put it in place in the gradient, because you may choose to go back in and blend things a bit more. So like these two could be a bit too much of a jump for me, so I might want to take this one, split it in half, and add a tiny bit of this guy into it, right? So you can always go back in and reblend things as needed. But there's my final gradient. All right, that's all I've got for you today. I hope that you found this a little bit of useful teaching on the subject of blending color on your hand cards. Believe it or not, the same thing goes for blending fiber types on your hand cards. If you found this video helpful, you can help me out by letting me know with a comment below, making sure that you have subscribed to my channel, and the biggest thing you can do to help me out is to share this video with someone else that you think would benefit from a little bit of a lesson on hand carding. That's all I've got for today. Bye for now. Happy spinning.